This week on Bullshit the podcast, we speak with Bruce Sellery. We talk about the concept of financial literacy being a bit outdated, and the more important way to look at things is being in terms of financial behavior. So maybe you can ask yourself, what sorts of financial behavior am I really engaging in? Welcome to Bullshit the podcast. This is the podcast that talks about how the financial services industry shifts your attention to make you feel more bullish. My name is John DeGuy. I am the author of the book Bullshit and the host of the podcast. My guest this week is Bruce Sellery. Bruce has a number of different hats that he wears. He is the CEO of Credit Canada. He has a money column for CBC Radio where he offers his comments on things. He is the host of the Moolah Law podcast on SiriusXM Radio, and he does a lot of work as a corporate speaker, as an MC, as a journalist, as a TV anchor, and he's an author. So Bruce does lots of wonderful things. Bruce, it's a pleasure having you on.
Thank you for the invitation and the kind introduction.
I wanted to begin by talking about your sort of corporate hat, your hat as the CEO of Credit Canada. And could you maybe take a moment to tell us about what that entails?
In 1966, people in the social services arena looked and saw what a devastating impact people's financial situations was having on their overall lives. So they got together and launched a credit counseling society in Toronto. And Credit Canada is the organization that is carrying the baton now more than 50 years later. We currently counsel about 10,000 people a year from coast to coast to coast, and they are people who are dealing with a level of debt they can't manage. So for some people, they can't manage $1,000. For some people, it's $100,000, but we are a non-judgmental, free, confidential resource for them to, explore what their options are. And there are many, many options available to people. Some of them aren't particularly appealing, but there are options for people to get a better handle on their debt. So I started 3 years ago in this role, and it's been a true joy to be able to engage in this way and be a part of a team that is really making a difference for a group of Canadians who are just really struggling right now.
It's important that people be able to lead their lives with dignity and that they can actually have a sense of purpose and can look forward to being able to do things in a better way. And one of the things I think that's great about you in particular is I think you and I have a lot of similarities. I think of you as being a very strong generalist who is a bridge. And when I say a bridge, what I mean is you're the kind of person who helps to find ways to connect people with solutions and finds ways to solve problems, helping the industry to get better. So I think that's a really important aspect of what you are and what you do. Could you maybe take a few more moments to go a little bit deeper about what you're doing with Credit Canada and talk more about the tools? When you say you help people, what does that look like? What does that entail?
So there are three principal services that we offer. The first is our historic service of credit counseling. So they call in and we provide them advice, first of all, compassion and listening and all that, but then advice on what their options are. For some people, that is more education. For some, that is what's called a debt consolidation program, which they can do with us. And for some, that's a referral out to a licensed insolvency trustee, to a mortgage broker, to various mental health supports, to free tax clinics. So there's many, many different things that we offer from a credit counseling perspective. A little over 2 years ago, we launched a financial coaching program, and this is a game changer in the marketplace. No one offers this. So the point of our financial coaching programs is to really transform the way people use credit. And we do that in a 6-week program that is as close to boot camp or rehab as you will find. It is virtual. People who are accepted into the program receive a full scholarship. It doesn't cost them a penny. But when they show up, we ask a lot of them. They need to do the homework. They need to show up on time every time. They need to have an accountability buddy. They need to do all these things. And what we have found over time is that holding people to such a high standard delivers off the charts results. The other dynamic is this whole course unfolds in a community that is trusting and supportive and really stands on the shoulders of each other to help these incredible results come to fruition. So what we see in the quant measures, big reduction in debt outstanding, big increase in credit score over time, because people are empowered and prompted and held accountable to take action. So credit counseling, financial coaching, and then third is a whole bunch of other kind of educational resources. So for example, last year we launched e-learning for newcomers to Canada. We're the first and only resource to offer essential credit and credit score education in 8 different languages. So we looked at the languages for newcomers to Canada. Sure, there's some English and some French, Spanish, Arabic, all these different languages. So we do that. We're doing some more work coming into Financial Literacy Month this year that will continue the work that we're doing on newcomers. We do hundreds of webinars a year. There's a gazillion blogs. You mentioned the radio show. So lots and lots of initiatives.
That's wonderful. And you mentioned financial literacy. And financial literacy is important for people who are struggling with credit. And it's also, to my experience, a problem with, let's call them ordinary Canadians, people who are maybe not struggling, but they're just ordinary people.
Yeah.
To your mind, what can be done to improve financial literacy? And I'm going to ask you this question in 2 parts. One, for the general public, but also what do you think can be done to help financial advisors do a better job of improving literacy for the people they serve?
So I will provide one piece of context before I answer. And this is going to sound contrarian, but I know a contrarian, and his name's John, and he's sitting across from me right now. So you're clearly a contrarian. I actually don't love financial literacy, and I don't love the phrase. I use the phrase because that's what the marketplace uses. But really what we're trying to do is deliver change and transformation in financial behavior. And if I could change behavior without teaching anybody anything, it would be fantastic. That would be amazing. So let's use nutrition as an example. There are tons and tons and tons of programs that teach you about all the things about nutrition and how much you can eat and when you should eat it and intermittent fasting. That knowledge has diminishing returns. The people who have a handle on their health and well-being at some point have an insight. And the insight is what alters behavior, not the knowledge. Because the knowledge, you Google it, you can find out how many calories are in the can of Coke. So everything that we do is focused on trying to help people change their financial behavior. And so when I think about all of our work, what we're trying to do is help be a catalyst to an insight in which people say, oh my God, I have got to work on this. Because once they have that insight, once the light bulb goes off, they're going to Google, how do I pay off my credit card? Because the doing, like what there is to do, super simple. The knowledge, super, super simple. To your second part, what can financial advisors do? The very best financial advisors really do think holistically about their client in all facets: communication, action, organization, estate planning. And I think the not so great financial advisors focus on the investment piece and exclude all the other dynamics that drive financial well-being. You and I both know the investment piece is very easy. It's very easy. You need a low-cost, diversified portfolio, start early, and save for decades on end. Compound interest is going to take you most of the way there. And so I think the magic for financial advisors is being a catalyst to conversations between spouses, between parents and kids, having a holistic family plan that's really grounded in people's dreams. And that's not some sort of definition of the acronyms of TFSAs. It's helping to ground people's behaviors with the values and the goals that they hold dear.
Okay, so then that leads me to wonder about hacks. Are there things that you would do to help someone actually change their behavior? Can you maybe give me an example of, if you just sort of do this, your behavior will change, and who cares if you don't know what TFSA stands for?
100%. Here's the question. What's your money for?
Okay.
I asked this question I've been asking this question for a decade, more than a decade. And when you really get people to consider that question, they can move beyond the mortgage, the groceries, the kids' sporting activities, and find an answer that is deeply connected to values and that is an act of creation. What I mean is they made it up. It's not a description. The money's for the mortgage is a description. I'm asking for an act of creation. And when I go through some examples, so I'll say, your money could be for family. Your money could be for beauty. It could be for experiences. It could be for contribution. It could be for prestige. It could be for like whatever it is. When you find that, it gives you language. It provides you with some motivation, and it helps you adjudicate whether your behavior is consistent with what I call your context, what your money is for, or it isn't. Because if you answer that question, you say, in my case, my money is for adventure. So I am very clear on that. It empowers me. It excites me. I do this. If I don't file my taxes on time and I get hit with some sort of penalty from the CRA, I have less adventure. And so what we're shifting is the conversation from taxes, TFSA, and all that stuff to, oh my God, I want to hike the circumnavigation of Mont Blanc in Europe. That's what I'm excited about. And that has the values and the dreams and the goals for our ordinary Canadians be inextricably linked to their financial behavior.
Are there things that you think can still be demystified? Is there anything that you think is maybe more complex than it needs to be? So when you're trying to get people to connect to whatever it is that's motivating them, and if that's circumnavigating Mont Blanc,
Yeah.
Are they maybe being held back by the industry making things too complex, and it can make it
100%.
simple?
Yeah. And it's like we are trying to get people to listen to every single genre of music all at once. How about we just choose one radio station that we really, really love and groove to that one? So the model that I came up with years ago that continues to resonate for people today is called the priority pyramid. And it is based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I don't know, did you ever study that in psychology?
Oh yeah, I did.
Yeah. So it's a pyramid, it's a triangle, and at the base level is like food and shelter, and at the tippy top is self-actualization. You don't talk to a person who's experiencing homelessness, who has no idea where their next meal is going to come from, about their self-actualization. Like, they can't even hear that. So when we look at people's financial circumstances, the pyramid is really clear. Cash flow is at the base, consumer debt, savings. The next level is tax savings vehicles, investments, and then optimizing returns. So what we could do to make it simpler is empower individuals to determine where they are on the priority pyramid and have them focus exclusively on that one layer, not at multiple layers, not trying to do all sorts of different things, tune out every single thing except for the layer that's relevant to them. And for many people, it's cash flow, earning more than you spend. For many people, it's debt. Like, I got $500 in credit card debt. Well, then do not have a conversation with me about how you're going to, buy GameStop or crypto or any investment thing, because the guaranteed return is in eliminating that 25% interest that you're paying on that credit card debt. So when people see that priority pyramid, they choose their layer, and they're like, oh, are you telling me that's all I'm supposed to do? That is all you are supposed to do, that one thing. And when you've done that, you move up to the next layer, and then up to the next layer, and up to the next layer.
That was exactly what my next question was going to be. So thanks for anticipating that. You're an energetic and optimistic guy, and I'm wondering if do you think that it's possible that the industry might be sometimes too optimistic? Is that even possible?
Too optimistic about what?
About anything, about what it can accomplish. If you start thinking about the way the people in finance speak to the public, if you look at the ads, if you look at an ad for an investment company or an insurance company, it's usually a retired couple sitting on a Muskoka chair, looking over a lake and sipping a glass of Chardonnay. And now that might be the sort of thing, as you get along the hierarchy of needs, an aspirational sort of thing for maybe 5 or perhaps even 10% of the population. But there's a whole bunch of people that are going to look at that ad and go, it's not for me. I have no chance of doing that. So I'm wondering if maybe, the industry seems to speak to the top 1%, the high income earners, the high net worth, and the ultra high net worth. And does that maybe leave other people feeling as though they're not being heard?
I wouldn't say so, and here's why. They are very sophisticated marketers. If those ads didn't work, they would do something else. And
Uh,
remember that most of the big financial institutions, they're mass audience. So, the very high end family office or high net worth financial advisory firms, they've got enormous minimums. The bulk of the market is humans who go into their bank branch, they sign up for a mutual fund, and they contribute to that mutual fund over the course of decades. That's when we think about the 35 million Canadians who live in this country. Most of them are doing that, and most of the marketing is going to be exactly as you described, these gleeful people of, all the colors of the ethnicities and, same sex and cute puppies and babies and all that. So I think where I would, to answer the essence of your question around optimism, is I think where there is a disconnect is in terms of the marketing and the products. Because if you go in without any discernment about the products you're investing in, and you buy a mutual fund with a 2.5% MER, you just put your money in that over the course of time, it is going to be much more difficult for you to achieve that, driving my Vespa on the coast of, the Amalfi Coast, because you're just not going to have the returns. You can achieve that even if you are lower to middle income, if you're able to have a significant delta between revenue and expenses, a significant delta to save, and B, if you're in a low-cost diversified portfolio. And I think the robo-advisors have done a better job providing a product that makes it really practical. Like you can actually really, really do that. And if you start with time on your side, I think you can get there. So if that makes sense, not too optimistic in terms of what people can achieve, probably too optimistic when they're in products that aren't going to deliver that.
When you see banks running ads that say things like "you're richer than you think," and what it does, if I'm hearing you correctly, and please, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you can correct me if I'm reading this wrong. It's like ordinary mom and pop people, working class people who are just earning 70, 75, $80,000 a year, see these ads of people with a cottage on the lake, and they can somehow imagine themselves in those ads. And and I know that that's not really realistic. And yet, as you say, the banks are sophisticated in running these ads. They wouldn't run the ads if they wouldn't work. So that is what I'm worried about in terms of the optimism bias, is that there's a whole generation of people who somehow seem to think, and they're being aided and abetted, they're being enabled in their false beliefs by an industry that's saying it's wonderful. And I think I know my view is that it would be maybe better to tell them, well, just do the things that you're talking about, build a diversified portfolio, have a delta on your
Oh,
savings rate,
John,
and just get by.
your naivete is so endearing. So you didn't read this part of my bio. I began my career in packaged goods marketing at Procter & Gamble. So I sold a lot of stuff to people, consumable stuff, Tide, skincare, Pampers diapers. And for sure, the marketing efforts are you're communicating a benefit, but you're communicating a benefit in the most compelling way possible. Think about the beauty category, for example. Any of these beauty ads feature a TV star, a movie star, or a supermodel. And if we apply your logic, then we would say that for the average person who buys the stuff in a bottle and they squirt it into their hand and they slather it on their face, they don't have a expectation that there is a linear connection between what they did with that creamy goo and their ability to date George Clooney. Like that's just not happening, but it is an aspirational thing that has them buy that product and do that basic thing. So I am a pragmatist. The financial services companies are staffed with really skilled marketers who are going to do everything they can to drive volume, and they should. We're capitalists. This is where we live. This is how this works. So they're going to continue to do that. I think what is critical, if we speak to the individuals, and the individuals are sufficiently knowledgeable, they have the insight that actually that's marketing. And here's what it's going to take for me to forward my own ambition. But your criticism is of the financial services sector is for anything. It's for cars, it's for beauty care, it's for absolutely anything. They're selling us this higher ideal, and they want us to part with our money on the belief that our life is going to be better because of this goop in a jar. It's not the case.
Okay. All right. I think you're right. You're one of the relatively few people who's accused me of being naive. I'll have you know. So most people, although quixotic has come up from time to time. So
Yes.
we'll see. Where do you think we're lagging? If there are things that we can do to help people to do a better job of changing their behavior to get better outcomes for
Yeah.
reasons that are important to them, where do you think we can do a better job?
Financial planning. Financial
Okay.
planning. And so the best, and I keep using the phrase the best financial planners, the best financial advisors, whatever designation, they really think holistically about a human's life. And the investments are at the tail end of it. And so I happen to be someone who believes in the value of a fee-only financial planner. I pay for that out of pocket. It has been transformative for me to do this. And my husband's like, why are we doing this? Why are we spending this money on what you do? And first of all, it's not what I do. Second of all, we need a separate set of eyes on our assumptions. And the financial plan is so motivating because you make these assumptions and you can see the math will show you, it will show your future self what is possible based on the behavior of your present self. So I would love it for every single person to have that plan because I think it would make it much easier for them to make short-term decisions about how they allocate resources, their financial resources, their time resources. If we could say, and I'm going to pick on takeout food just because it's a simple thing to pick on, is if you just stopped doing that. So you order takeout food once a week for your family, that's probably $400, right? It's somewhere around 400, depending on the restaurant, whatever. So $400 a month. If you stop doing that, and instead of ordering takeout, you had breakfast for dinner, nowhere near as delicious, by the way, but you took that $400 and invested it in a low-cost, diversified, exchange-traded fund, and it then just sat there for 30 years. What would be possible for your family decades down the road? And we don't have a simple mechanism to help people do that. And their brains aren't designed to do that. Our brains are designed to do the opposite. So I think that's the big idea. And the industry isn't necessarily set up for that because of all the competing needs for every dollar. Uber Eats, they're extraordinary marketers. And who doesn't want some Korean barbecue arriving at your house so you don't have to cook?
Okay, so let's see if we can move to the way I always like to end things off, and that's with the two things. The first is that's bullshit. If it was up to you, Bruce, what thing would you point to as being a bit of a sore spot in an area that needs some cleaning up in the financial services industry?
This is going to come from the individual, not from the industry, but that is for the individual to assess whether or not they are receiving value from the price they pay for financial advice. And this is not a knock on financial advisors. Sometimes people are like, why are you coming after financial advisors? If you can prove to yourself and to your client that your value is worth it, 100%, you should do that. By the way, my mom has an amazing financial advisor. She has had him for decades, and he has 100% been a core team member for her financial health. So I lots of great things to say about that as a sector. But for someone who's got, $1 million and they're paying that 1%, are they getting the value of that? And if they've got a much smaller, nest egg that they're building towards, are they getting value for the 2.3% or 2.5% that they're inevitably paying on those mutual funds? And if you do that research and you can answer yes, hooray. But I think for the individual, you really need to we spend so much time finding the cheapest price on Tide detergent. We'll drive to like 3 different supermarkets to find it. And we spend almost no time assessing the value of the price that we pay for financial advice.
Okay, so then that brings us to Shift Happens. What would you do specifically to help people to do a better job of shopping based on price when they're looking for financial advice?
Yeah, I think that they would need to answer for themselves, how much does that service actually cost? And is that worth it to me? So there's been all these efforts, right? CRM2, there's all these regulatory blah, 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 blah. But I think if you were to ask most people, they would be unable to answer the question of how much they pay in actual dollars. Maybe they'd know the percentage. They'd be like, I don't know, my advisor said it's 1.25% or whatever, or I know what an MER is and I know it's 2.5%. But calculate that in absolute dollars and then ask yourself, is this worth it? Is this worth it to me? And if it's not, you have two choices. One, find someone else or find a different way to do it. Second is to demand more value from your advisor. So, you talk to advisors and they'll say, oh yeah, I do a financial plan. I've seen some of these financial plans. They're not actually financial plans compared to the one that you'd get if you paid for, a fee-only person. So as consumers, we need to stand up for ourselves and say, actually, no, that's not sufficient. That's not a good enough job. I'm paying you $5,000 or whatever every single year. And here's what I expect. Here's what I need.
Perfect. Bruce, I want to thank you. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. You're always full of energy and full of insight. It's always wonderful having a chat with you.
It is totally my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
John DeGooey is a portfolio manager with Design Securities in Toronto. He is the author of both Bullshift, How Optimism Bias Threatens Your Finances, and Stand Up to the Financial Services Industry, Protecting Yourself from Well-Intended but Oblivious Advisors. The books are available online and in bookstores everywhere. The opinions expressed on Bullshift and Shift Happens should not be construed as investment advice. You can reach John at jdeguy@designsecurities.ca or at 647-STAND-UP. That's 647-782-6387.